There's a vivid memory from my 20s that still lingers in my mind, one that can never seem to be shaken. I remember standing at the edge of a decision, one that could change everything for me, but feeling paralyzed, trapped by a fear that I couldn't escape. It was the fear of failure, an overwhelming, suffocating force that prevented me from taking meaningful action towards my dreams. I had so many ideas, so many passions, but every time I thought about stepping out of my comfort zone, that fear would seize me. I'd tell myself, what if I'm not good enough? What if people laugh at me? What if I try and fail? What if... Now, the worst part of all these what if and all these thoughts was that it felt so real, so consuming, that I couldn't see beyond them. And I remember a specific moment when I was sitting in a coffee shop. I was writing out plans for a project that I was so excited about. The vision was clear in my mind, but as soon as I started thinking about actually starting, panic set in. My heart raced. My hands were shaking. They shook. And I never felt more unsure of myself. I spent hours convincing myself that I wasn't ready, that I needed more time, more preparation. But deep down, I knew I was just afraid. I was afraid of failing. I was afraid of putting myself out there, falling short of my own expectations. It was like I was stuck in a loop. The more I hesitated, the more the fear grew. And the more I convinced myself that I wasn't capable, I watched opportunities pass by, afraid to take even the first step. That fear in that moment felt like I was going to let it define me forever. But little did I know, that is not how the story would end. Now, looking back, I can say with confidence that I've moved past this fear. And it came down to one simple, profound shift. And it was in perspective. Okay? For most of my life, I carried the weight of the fear with me. Whether it was starting a new project, launching something important, or even speaking up in a meeting. My first instinct was to imagine every worst case scenario. What if I wasn't good enough? What if I failed? And this was exhausting. And I grew tired of this. But here is the truth. I didn't move past that fear because I magically became fearless. No. It happened because I changed the way that I look at myself and I look at failure itself. And that shift was the key. It was a slow, often painful journey, but it was worth every single step. The reason so many high achievers struggle in pursuing their dreams is because they're trapped by the fear of failure. Now, you might have big goals, exciting ambitions, and a clear vision where you want to go, but how do you actually push past the paralyzing fear and take the first step? That is the crux of the issue. And it's one of the hardest things to overcome when you're constantly worried about falling short or measuring up. But the good news is, there is a right answer. I've studied countless successful people, entrepreneurs, creatives, business owners, history people, famous people throughout history, and they all do one thing that sets them apart. And it is not about being fearless or pretending that fear doesn't exist. This hidden power has helped people face fear head on, take bold action, and continue to move forward. Now, no matter how intimidating the road ahead may seem, they keep pushing. So in this video, I'm going to break down this simple yet powerful method for overcoming fear, the fear of failure, and finally, help you start pursuing your dreams. By the way, I'm John, and I've helped some high achievers conquer their fear and take on action, and I'd like to do that for you by sharing this. This practice is what made all the difference for me. Let's dive in here. I recently came across a quote, and it really resonated with me. Failure is not the opposite of success. It's part of success. At first, it didn't quite make sense to me. I mean, failure. It felt like the worst thing that could happen, right? But then I really started thinking about it. It hit me harder than I expected, actually. I realized that every time I avoided failure, I was avoiding growth. And when I finally reflected on it, I saw the fundamental shift that I needed to make. And it was around embracing failure and not running from it. Now, let me be clear. It's not that I suddenly stopped being afraid of failure or even failing. The fear is still there. It's naturally part of being human. But what I've learned is that I don't have to let that fear control me anymore. I had to get to a place where failure was it no longer felt like the end, but just a step in the process. And once I made that shift, I realized no matter what happens, I'll always be okay. I still learn, I'll still grow, and I'll still move forward, and so will you. I used to be terrified of taking risks. I would hold back from starting projects or going after opportunities because I was focused on the possibility of failure. I would imagine every worst case scenario and convince myself that if I failed, it would be catastrophic. That fear paralyzed me. But over time, as I pushed through that fear, I started to realize that failure wasn't the end of the world. In fact, it was often just the beginning of something better. I began to understand that every successful person has faced failure at some point in their life, at some point in their journey. The difference is that they didn't let it stop them. They learned from it. They adapted. They kept going. Some people say, fail forward. So let's take a moment here. Think about a time when you wanted something but didn't go for it because you were too afraid to fail. I'll share with you an example from my own life. There were countless times that I had an idea, a project, or a goal in mind, but I hesitated to take action. I kept thinking, what if it doesn't work out? What if people laugh at me? Those thoughts would stop me dead in my tracks. And I wanted to be perfect. I wanted everything from the start to be absolutely perfect. And I believed that if it wasn't, I'd be a failure. But now when I look back, I wish I failed more times. I look back, I realized that real failure wasn't in not getting it right the first time. The real failure was never trying at all. Every time I hesitated out of fear, I missed an opportunity to grow, to learn, and to move forward. And I know I'm not alone in this. A lot of people, a lot of you watching, when you guys start on your path to something new, whether it's launching a business, changing careers, or pursuing a dream, let fear of failure hold you back. Many people do this. They think they need everything to be perfect. They can begin, but the truth is, you'll never be perfect. No one is, but that's okay. Real growth happens when you push through the discomfort. When you, despite out of fear, you still push through, and when you embrace failure as part of the journey. I'm not sharing this to get sympathy or to make anyone feel sorry for me. I'm opening up because I know what it's like to feel stuck in that cycle of fear, to hold yourself back from what you really want because of the possibility of failure. But here's the thing, that fear isn't a signal to stop. It's a signal to move forward. Failure isn't a reflection of who you are. It's just feedback. It's part of the process. So here's what I learned. When you change your relationship with failure, everything changes. Failure isn't something to avoid. It's something to learn from. It's not about being perfect or succeeding from the first try. I mean, think about it. Some of the most successful, famous people have these absolutely just drastic, dramatic instances in their life where it looks like they're at rock bottom. It's about starting and keeping at it, no matter what. The real failure comes when you never take that first step out of fear. All those famous stories that we've just spoken about, if they never took that step, we wouldn't be talking about them today. The biggest shift I made was realizing that growth can't happen if I'm always afraid of making mistakes. Once I stopped viewing failure as a personal flaw, I started seeing it as a necessary part of success. That's when everything shifted. I became more willing to take risks, make mistakes, and keep going because I knew that failure wasn't the end. It was simply a part of the process. So let me ask you this. Why are you hesitating to pursue your dreams? Is it because you are afraid to fail? If so, you're missing the point. Success isn't about avoiding failure. It's about pushing through it, learning from it, and growing because of it. Think about someone that you admire. Maybe it's a famous entrepreneur or a public figure, someone from history. They didn't get to where they are without failing, without facing setbacks. But they kept going. They failed forward. They used their failures as stepping stones. And I can relate to that. There was a time when I was so afraid of failure that I didn't take any action at all. I stayed stuck, waiting for the perfect moment, waiting for everything to fall into place. Not until this, not until that, making so many reasons why not. But once I started taking imperfectly taking action, 80% out of the 100, 20% out of the 100, failing, learning, and improving, that's when I started seeing real progress. And it's the same for you. If you want to stop letting fear of failure hold you back, you have to change your mindset. You have to realize that failure is a part of the process, not the end of the road. And if you're afraid of making mistakes, then you're missing out on every little thing about this. You're missing out on what can lead to success, and that is experience. So ask yourself, are you going to let the fear of failure hold you back from the pursuit of what you truly want? Are you ready to embrace the journey? Mistakes and all. Thank you for listening. Remember, failure is not your enemy. It is part of the process. Peace out.